we'll give people some more time. I know there's a couple more coming, so.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if your middle school kids were mad about learning that next Friday K-5 gets off the day, but middle school and up does not get off the day. And
I
that,
haven't heard anything yet, but I know
yeah,
the teachers are talking that like they might be upset about that. And I was like, well, I don't know about that or not. They haven't said anything yet.
well, I thought it was both groups, but yeah, kindergarten through fifth grade gets off Friday and Monday, and then everyone gets off Monday.
Mm. You gonna draw along with us, Ashley? Oh, you're muted.
I don't, probably not. I am, I'm okay with like looking at something that's already done and like, working on it, but um, drawing is not my forte. I will say that.
Yeah, I understand.
Maybe give it one more minute, Emily. We should have at least one more joining us.
Okay, sounds good.
Oop. Actually had someone just register, so we'll see if they can log on here real quick too.
Okay, sounds
But
good.
let's aim for 7:04. That way, if not, people can jump in when they need to jump in. So
Yeah, I mean the first couple of minutes are just kind of like introductory, so
sure.
they wouldn't be missing too much at all.
Um, I'm not gonna turn my camera on because my camera is in a really weird spot on my computer. I just thought I'd let you know.
Oh, that's fine. Just if you have any questions, just be sure to ask in either the chat or out loud.
Okay.
Everybody's so quiet. Well, Emily, if you want to go ahead and get started, I
Sure.
will watch and see if people want to join. So
Sounds good. Okay, I'll first share screen. So just give me a second. There we go. Okay. So first of all, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Emily Estes, and I'm currently attending SDSU as a studio art major. And one of the main things that I focus on in when I make art is I draw a lot of stuff that's based off of and referencing just the anime style in general. And so I have a few examples of stuff that I make sometimes while I am in classes and stuff, and just so you can kind of see like that you don't necessarily have to have like a typical anime style, and that you can experiment with it and really add to it and have fun with it and just have a lot more texture than you might normally see in like a regular anime style or like stuff you see. I also included some of the digital work. I'll be drawing digitally just so it's easier for you guys to see today, and I'll go over some of the basics and stuff. I'm gonna mainly be focusing on like what would be considered like a bust up shot, so like chest and up, just because one of the things that's like really recognizable and really important and really hard to get when you're first starting out is like drawing the facial features and the hair. At least that's what I had problems with, so I thought it would be best to cover like the basics. And okay, this one is something you should probably screenshot. I made it for you guys. I just didn't want to tilt it to like ruin it and make it harder to see, but it's like a reference sheet, and I drew out just different styles of like eyes, noses, ears, mouths, and then I put some examples on the bottom of how you can like put together the different pieces with it to make different expressions and everything. And I thought it would be nice to have like some examples and everything. And I tried to include a wide variety of different eyes and mouths and nose styles. So definitely screenshot that. I'll leave it on for just a little bit while I'm talking so that you guys can get a good picture of that and use it as a reference for yourselves. And if at any point you have a question while I'm talking, feel free to either put it into the chat or to just ask the question. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have, or if I'm going too fast, just tell me to slow down, just so it helps. I included some slides here, and it's just kind of showing from like a sketch perspective to like line art to like more of a finished work. And we'll probably have enough time to go from like sketch and then to maybe a little bit of line art. And then I did prepare something that is already line art with like some base colors, so I guys can show you some coloring techniques as well. And then I also included like another side by side just so you can kind of see the difference from like when you add color to like just the basic drawing itself. And there's more than one way to shade. You can do black and white as well, or with pencils. A lot of these techniques transfer not only from digitally to just your traditional methods. That is that for the PowerPoint. I am going to switch to my other program. So let me see. Just gotta scroll through and find it. There we go. Okay. So let's see. Let me move this away. There we go. So First off, the most important thing when you're drawing a face is knowing how to put in guidelines for just different head poses and stuff. And then obviously putting in the neck and everything. So I'm gonna first kind of like show you how to draw it from different angles, because that can be really difficult starting out. And I'll show you kind of like what I do, and I'll explain like what each of the lines are and like what they're kind of there for and everything. So if you get out your pieces of paper and just get out your pencils and stuff, um, I think you probably, I'll give you just a little bit to get those out before I really start in. I'll get a new layer going.
Here. Which paper do you like? Do you want us to use our own paper, or we got 2 different kinds of paper? Which one do you want us to use?
Just regular sketch paper, like the lighter one, honestly would be the best one for you guys to grab. It honestly really doesn't matter. You're just going to be practicing this stuff. So whatever you feel most comfortable on.
I sent, there's like white paper that's from a sketch, like sketch pad paper. And then there's some, is it like a cream colored paper, right? Also in the packet?
Yes.
Yep. So the cream colored paper is for like your practice paper.
Okay. So the practice paper, I didn't exactly know what's in the packet, so. Okay. So I'll click off this one. And then I'll like zoom in. So what I always start off with when I want to start drawing faces and heads is I always start off by drawing a circle, and by no means do these have to be perfect circles. They're just kind of guidelines for you. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit wonky looking, so you can just kind of start off. And I usually go in strokes because it's a little bit easier to control it versus going like this. It's harder to get it all together. So you can just kind of go in strokes like this. And then so then I might zoom in a little more so it's easier for you guys to see. And then once I have it, you just decide where you want the face, and you'll put a line down somewhere in this circle. And this will be kind of like where the center half of your face is. And that's just kind of like a line running down between your eyes and through your nose and stuff. And that's just gonna kind of help you placing the chin and everything. Some people like to start off and draw the face and then the chin. And then I like putting in and having the face first. Just kind of like the chin in a little bit. Sometimes you do have to come back and like erase and like fix it, but don't worry about that. Just when you are sketching, my best advice is sketch lightly, because then it's easier for you to erase and you won't see the lines as easy when you draw lightly. And so for a chin for like it facing this way, I usually start and you can connect it to the circle, and you can just kind of go in strokes, and you can kind of almost denote where you want the chin to be. So I might put a line here, and then you can kind of connect them. And like, if you ever look at a picture of a face, the cheeks are a little bit rounded. So you'll come down and you can just kind of connect here. And sometimes if you can change up like you don't have to follow exactly how a face shape is. You can look at a lot of different pictures. Sometimes I like to over exaggerate cheeks. Sometimes I just leave them like that. And then I always kind of put a mark here kind of where I want the jaw to go, just because it is facing to the side. So if you ever look at a picture of a face facing to the side, you're going to see some more of the ear, and it's not going to exactly meet, like it's going to follow, but it's going to look different from the side that's further away from you. The only side, like when you're drawing a face, if it's facing you completely to the front, it will be an identical curve here, but since it's facing to the side for a little bit, it will be different. So what I usually do is I'll kind of gauge and make the chin, and then I kind of just go up, and then you can curve it here where you have that kind of line where you want it to go, and then you can always erase it like Yeah. Oops. Sorry. Wrong one. Just a second. Here we go. So you can kind of erase. And then usually what I put in after I do the chin is I put in where I want the ear to go. Or actually, I should show you where to put the eyes. So when I have the circle like this and I have that line, I usually put the line for the eyes right about here. And it just kind of cuts through the circle. And this is going to help you know where to place the eyes. And then the nose is probably about halfway down. And when you are putting the eyes, I usually guess about halfway between the bottom of the chin and the top of the head. You can change that if you want. Certain anime characters, especially the ones that are depicting younger people, like kids and stuff, their facial structures are a little more smushed, so they might have their eyes and their face like a little bit further down on the face. And their cheeks will be a little bit more rounded. And I can show you an example of that. I'm just going for like a general, more, I guess, towards a normal head shape. And so your eyebrows are usually about a 4. Like if you were to cut this in half, this would be kind of where your hairline might be. And then if you cut that in half, this is kind of where your eyebrows are going to start most of the time. And then if you cut from where the eyes are in half, that's kind of about where the nose is going to go. And then about a half of where that is about where the mouth fits. Give or take. It's just nice to have like little dots where you can kind of aim to shoot to place things. Just because if you've ever had it where you're drawing something out, I know I have, and you just kind of totally mess it up and you draw the mouth way too close to the nose, or you draw the nose way too short. So just kind of putting in guidelines can help you. And so when you're putting in the ear, if you ever look at, or you can kind of feel it yourself, if you draw back from your mouth and your eyebrow and you draw back, your ears are the same, like that's the same size. So you would go, and if you want to draw a ear, you'd start and you'd have the top of the ear line up with where the eyebrows are probably going to be, and then you draw kind of like a treble clef, and or like kind of like a weird U-C shape, and then you can kind of connect it up to like the nose, mouth area. It might be a little bit like that, and then for the neck and stuff, usually I suggest at this pose you kind of have the neck starting at about here, a little bit to the side, kind of where the mouth, at the edge of the mouth is. Which if you were drawing in for eyes and stuff, the edge of your mouth is where your pupils usually sit. So like if you were looking forward, that's usually how wide your mouth is. But yeah, I'd usually put the neck about here. And then I'd put it just a little bit behind the ear is where I'd put the next part. And then I'll just quickly. So for these lines and stuff with the neck, you could just kind of like make a cut down, and then you have what would be your collar clavicle bone, and then you can draw here and make a nice curved line for what would be like your collarbone. And then I usually just kind of arc it off because you have those muscles on the back of your neck that kind of make it more of a triangle instead of like some where they might do it like this. It just looks a little more natural if you kind of just start to lightly slope it out. But if you are trying to draw a girl, because this is kind of more of like a male anatomy, if you are trying to draw a girl, you would make it a lot softer. So it would be more like this. For like a girl, it's a lot softer. It's not quite as hard of like, I would say like this is kind of like a triangle shape. It's not quite as a hard triangle. Okay, so I can kind of show you how to put in some eyes now, and I'm gonna actually pick a slightly different color just so it's a little stands out a little bit easier in the guides. So just kind of put a line here. I'll erase a little bit out just so it's a little easier to see. And like these guides, if you find that you don't really need all of them, they're just kind of like helping you map it out. So like if you're perfectly fine and you're comfortable with drawing a mouth and a nose, like you don't have to put in the guides for a mouth and a nose. Maybe you don't need the guides for placing the eyes and stuff like that. And you can also work and like erase at the same time. So like I might make the corner of the eye run here. So like that. And then you can just kind of cut down. So, and then to draw the other eye, that's always a struggle, is drawing the second eye. My biggest advice is don't necessarily stress about making them look exactly like the other eye. Just kind of going for like a generalized shape that's very similar to the other eye is usually what works best, unless you are drawing like a face on full frontal where it will be kind of mirrored. Specifically when the faces are facing to the side a little bit like this in like a 3/4 view, or anything in between that's not like perfectly full on, the eyes won't be exactly identical just because one's a little bit further distance from you. So I just kind of go for making it look natural compared to that. So like running it to the edge of your cheek, making sure you get the height right. And then just kind of drawing it down. So see, they're not the same shape, but they look like they match on the face. So honestly, it just takes a lot of practice to get the other eye to look right. And it can be really hard to not draw it in reverse and think about it that way. One of my best tips for that actually is if you're drawing on a piece of paper, or even if you're drawing digitally, let's say you struggle with drawing the other eye, you can always like flip over your paper and kind of draw it, and then you can always use like some like wax paper or something, and you can draw it like the normal way you would want to draw an eye. Like if you don't like drawing eyes flipped a different direction, you can draw it that way, and then you can flip it back and you'll have the eye, or like then you flip that and you'll have the eye going the right way for you to help you see it and draw it on your picture. But I definitely say like try getting used to drawing them both, going both eyes. It'll help you in the long run. Get used to it. But like if you're really struggling or like you really can't see it at all, that's a really good trick that I learned for it. And then I usually put in the nose. You can draw it however you want. I'm just gonna draw how I usually would draw a nose, and then usually your nose, like you have the bridge of it, and it follows and it sits on this center line in the face pretty well. And then maybe we'll put in the eyebrows next. Eyebrows, if you ever look at some anime characters, sometimes their eyebrows are down here. Some of them, like if they're more surprised, a lot of girl characters have their eyebrows way up here. It's kind of up to you what you want to draw. I usually suggest starting the eyebrow at about where the eye starts and it ends at about where the eye ends, and it just kind of arcs, at least for a regular eyebrow. And then like if I were to draw it in a different style, some have them where they split off, so you can draw it like this, and you can draw any kind of shape. It's just kind of, they generally have an arc, and they just kind of generally have a nice soft arc, and they're not really an even arc most of the time, so they're not like a perfect like really wide U. They kind of like have an arc that focuses and is a little bit like where the pupil is about where the peak of your arc is, if you were to put in a pupil. It's up to you whether you want to put in the pupils or like really detail out the eyes. Usually I kind of get like where the outside of the eye is, and then I draw a little bit more, and then I'll add in like the pupils and everything. But you can kind of pick where they're going, and then you can match the pupils to each other. So like if you want them to look off in the distance, you might draw this one way over here, but you wouldn't draw that one way over there because they look like their eyes don't match up. So you just kind of follow. So if you have one way over here, the one over here would be like this, and vice versa. So if you had one that was like way over here, it would be over here. And then like straight on would be like this. See, now they look like they're making an eye contact. So you just kind of need them to match up. And so looking straight on is usually they're about the same location, and then if they're on one side, then they are on the other side on the eye is the best explanation I can give for like placing pupils and everything. And then mouths, I usually start and I'll draw like a little bit of what would be like the Cupid's bow on your lip, which is the bottom of your lip. And then I might draw in, depending on if I want to smile or an open mouth or whatever, but usually I'll draw in the corners of the mouth to kind of get where I want them to go. And then I just kind of connect the lines that way. And then it's totally up to you whether you want to draw and have upper lips or if you want to have lower lips, and you can make them as thin or as thick as you want. The thicker you make them, obviously the bigger your lips are going to be. The thinner you make them, the thinner the lips are going to be. And some of my best suggestions are just looking at reference pictures and kind of just getting an understanding like of like how a face looks and stuff, and just kind of understanding that from different angles the face will change how it looks. And like with the hair, generally your hairline, depending on, some people have hairlines like this, you get it coming down like that. And then other people sometimes have what's like the widow's peak, where it comes back like this and then down. And you don't always have to have the hairline. So like I know a lot of anime characters have these really big bangs that kind of cover over the eyes and everything. So you don't necessarily always need that. But if you want like the anime characters that have like this hair that splits and stuff, it helps you to kind of know where to put that split. But otherwise, so like let's say you wanted to put in the hair, you could just have where I usually map out where the sides of the hair goes, and then like there is a part I map out where these first pieces go, and then you can work from there. I'll go into more detail on the hair after, but if you're replacing it, let's actually I'll make it another layer just because I took up a lot of space on this one. Okay, so if you're drawing it from the other, like facing the other direction, it's a lot of the same principles. It's just doing it in like sort of almost a reverse. So I'll show you how to draw like a face straight on, because that is a little bit different. And so if you're to draw a face straight on, and I'll go a little bit faster through this one just so that we can get more time to work on like detailing out hair and then like the coloring section. So like a face straight on, you start the same way you would. You just draw another circle. And one thing that I sometimes do is like even on regular pieces of paper, I might sketch it out in like a color, like make my very roughest sketch in a color. And I definitely suggest like you don't have to like start to finish make a finished piece on one piece of paper. It's honestly a lot nicer if you can sketch it out, and then you can always get like your idea down and everything, and then you can transfer it to another sheet of paper if you want to like refine it more and color it and stuff, just so you don't have like the lines and everything. Because if you ever notice, like when you erase and you try to color something, sometimes there's like these indents from where you press really hard into the paper, and that kind of like eliminates that. Or if you get confused, like I do, if I sketch in graphite, I usually get confused what's guidelines, what's the lines I want to keep, stuff like that. So sketching in a different color can be really useful for that reason. So if you're going for a face that's straight on, you're going to cut basically, you're just going to cut that circle in half, which I'm a little bit off. There we go. Cut it in half like that. And then usually what I do is I put a little line where I want the chin to go again. And then just kind of drawing down from here. And you meet about halfway down a little bit. And sometimes I draw out both sides a little bit so you can start to get it even, because it's really hard sometimes to get a face straight on to get the like sides of the face even. So like starting at the similar spots and going step by step a little bit can help. And so I'll kind of turn it at about the same time and make it about as wide. And then you'll have a much more similar sized face for straight on. Like the jaw would be very similar. And obviously for jaws and stuff, you can change up how they go. So like if I were to, I'll duplicate this here. If I were to do this for like a smaller face, maybe I want to draw like a younger person. Or if I want to draw, like usually anime, the females generally tend to have a little skinnier faces. Or not necessarily skinnier faces, just faces that are usually wider, but they're shrunk more to give them more of like a youthful appearance. And so I would probably put my chin line a little higher up than I did. And then like it's a lot more of a noticeable slant. Like it's not as gradual. It's a very fast one. And then your side like this. And if it's easier for you, like sometimes I like to move my paper around a lot just because it's easier for me to get lines and like draw stuff and feel totally free to move around your paper. Like it's not, nobody's telling you that you can't. I mean, if you have problems drawing something, maybe you only draw it really well if you're drawing it like this, totally go for it. There's no one right way to do that. So if I were to draw, maybe I'll start with the eyes. And so maybe I want bigger eyes. So you can start with the eye, the top of your eyes. And maybe I want it to go to about here. So I might make an arc like that. And then usually sometimes I'll put like another mark. It's over here. So I kind of know how to start this and make the other side. Oh, they switch colors. Just a second. And you can just kind of arc it like that. And then maybe I want to have really big pupils. So I might, if it's like a really big eyed anime character, usually I'll draw in the pupils just to help me place like the bottom lines on the eyes. And then usually they have a little that. And then maybe like a line down here too. And then just kind of follow, get about the similar sizing. That one's a little bit smaller. So it goes. There we go. And then the lower line. And don't necessarily worry about getting like the eyes perfect when you're just sketching it out. You can always go back and change them up. And you can always add like the eyelids, maybe more eyelids. You can always add tons of eyelids, maybe under eye, maybe they're a little tired. And then like if this is a female character with like big eyes, usually the eyebrows are a lot higher here and they're a little bit thin. They're not quite so bushy. That. And then the hairline would be probably a little bit like here, I would say, just because you want them to have still some forehead. And then for the nose, sometimes I'll just kind of like map out where the shadow of it might be. Otherwise, some draw like a line like that, or some people go in and draw nostrils. And then mouth, it'll be here. See, it goes and lines up with the pupils. And then just kind of like maybe I want an opened mouth, so you can always open it. And then if they're smiling, usually they curve up. You can draw the lips. And then placing in ears. So you have the eyebrows. And then, you know, hair, you might have these big pieces here. And then the necks on girls are usually a bit thinner, so you might start a little bit outside of where the mouth hits. And like this. And then I'm going to make a much more gradual neck. See? Like where it meets to the juncture of the shoulder. And then you can always usually kind of outline where you might want that hair. Like so. And by no means does a sketch need to be nice and pretty. They can be messy. You're just kind of getting your idea out there and then you can further refine it. So I'll pick and I'll just kind of show you how I might end up like refining a sketch a little bit and then I'll move on to coloring. Does anybody have questions before I move on to the next section? You guys can just do like a react if you're all good to go. Okay. I'll just assume that we're all good to go and continue on to the next part. So what I might do to further refine something like this into drawing hair, there's a lot of different ways to style hair, but the best way I think about hair is to break it into sections and chunks and shapes. So you have like, I'll change it to a different color. So you have what I would consider to be like this shape here. I'll make it a little thicker too, so it's easier to see. So you have the shape that is like the hair about the side of the eyes. this. And you have that usually on both sides. And that can be a little different on each side. You don't have to have a nice even haircut. I've seen a lot of characters that have asymmetrical haircuts. Some characters have, bangs that go like this, where they're uneven, and then one side might be way longer over here. So don't feel like you're dictated to have like shorter hair or like your hair even. And then like if you want to make it then from like having it broken up into sections how you kind of want it to look, then you can always go through and detail it further. So you might have like little sections here. And I'll reset so it's a little easier to see the sections. And see you're really starting to get bangs. And then maybe like for here, I just want a break in these two. Like so. And maybe I just like that. And then usually I'll add like some kind of lines here to denote like bangs if they are like heavy bangs. And then usually the top of the hair you have a little bit of a heart. And then if you want to have short hair or long hair, I just kind of like, as I'm drawing, work on making interesting and then generally start to work in. So, and then sometimes you can like let it go to the neck like this. Otherwise, you can cut it in a little bit if you want to have that overlap. And then you can always have like a cowlick if you want. Some of them have it. And then I usually try to have at least make it a little bit different on the other side. That. And just kind of, you don't have to have the same pieces on each side, but just kind of going for about the same distance on each side. So if you were to like measure this, they're both about equally away from the head. Obviously that would change if you were to like do the head like this. What I might do with this one is, I might, if I follow the hair like this, I might have those split bangs. But see, they're different size because they're further away. And then I might kind of put where I want by the ear to go. And then maybe you have another piece here. And then it kind of like tucks in here. And then you're not going to see as much here. So I might just leave it where these two are kind of the same. And then maybe I'll kind of put a guide for myself behind the ear because if you ever look at your head, it is kind of like a circle like this. So this might be the back of the head. So you have a little bit easier time putting the hair in there, that. And then maybe fluffs up a little bit more on the side here on that part. And then a couple strands here. And then depending on how long your hair is, you might see some over here or you might not. Since this is pretty cropped even and close, you won't see any on this side over here. But if it was longer, you would definitely, draw in a couple pieces here. And you might see some down here if it's really long on the side of the neck. Let's see. So that's generally what I would do for hair and for eyes and stuff, is just kind of looking, putting in guidelines. For hair, the easiest way to draw hair is just kind of look at references of hair or anime hair that you like and just kind of breaking those into shapes. So like I said, breaking these down and just kind of understanding the shapes of it more than just looking at it as like a mass of hair. So now I'll probably move on to coloring just because like that's a pretty big section. So I actually prepared a picture to color. So I already went ahead and put in like the base colors, but if you were to be coloring this with colored pencils and stuff, I would color in every, like maybe like the hair and everything, I would color it in with like my lightest shade first. So I picked like the lightest shades and I'll be working darker just because it's easier that way for you. If you're starting out with everything at the like lightest color, then you can work, it's a little bit easier to blend it in. And so usually, you know, maybe you want to, so generally I'll start with showing you how to draw and like shade some hair and like where shadows might lie and stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom in. Usually I start with shadowing out the bangs and the eyebrows. So like eyebrows, usually if there's pieces of hair that go over them, usually I add color. Pick a color and I'll make it a little bit darker. It's a little easier to see. So usually I'd have a little bit of shading underneath the eyebrow, wherever your hair piece of hair kind of hits. So I might have it here and here, and then on this eyebrow, I'll probably have a little bit right here. And then, you know, maybe if you want to have it here too. You don't have to like shade the eyebrows. Not everybody does it. I just think it adds like a little extra when you are adding shading to shade the eyebrows just a little bit if you do have hair going over it. And then I usually kind of map out where I want shadows to be. So like these pieces kind of overlap each other a little bit, or one goes into the other. So I might kind of map out one there. And my best advice is kind of like deciding, like if you have bangs here, like his bangs probably end about here. And so just kind of putting that line there for yourself. So you can like move all the hair, because hair, if you ever look at it, especially for anime hair, it's very directional, and so you want to follow the direction. So, you know, generally hair, you know, at least for the bangs, you know, run this way, and then it runs in a line this way, and it runs this way. So they kind of arches and like frames the face. So I might put a little bit of shadowing here as well. And then this piece is behind this piece. So I put a little bit here, and then maybe you want to put some here. And then sometimes at the tips, I'll kind of, to make them feel a little bit fluffier, I'll put a little bit of like textured shadow in there. Like that. And then usually I'll bring it up like that. And then I might do the same thing just to kind of give it a little bit of volume. And just kind of working with like streaks and making sure that when you are bringing up the streaks, that they're following the line of the hair. Just a second, I think the computer, there we go. Yeah, I did freeze a little bit. So you're just kind of following that arc of the, what would be back to the bangs here. It's like this line. That denotes them as like bangs over like the back of the hair on the side of his head. And then these kind of overlap a little bit. And then I also just kind of encourage you, if you feel really stuck or you don't know quite what you want to do when you're drawing anime characters, is looking at animes or mangas that you just really admire and look up to. And you can kind of see and you can kind of think about, you know, like, what about it do I really like? And what about it do I really look up to? Just so you can kind of like draw the pieces of it that you really like. And then I might do a little bit of shading here. That. And as you can see, it's already starting to give his hair more of that look you might see. And then maybe I'll put some shading probably over here a little bit. Maybe those kind of meet up a little bit. A little bit of shading down here. And then I can also kind of show you how to put in highlights. But that's kind of like after you put in the shadows and everything. And, you know, usually in like anime and manga, shadows and highlights, at least in manga, are like black versus white. In a lot of animes, the highlight on the hair and stuff is still white. So if you're drawing it out traditionally, if you want to have like a nice crisp clear white, you can always use like a white gel pen, is what I would always do to get like a really nice white. And I wouldn't have to worry about it until I was further into my project, because the gel pen would just kind of go over top of whatever I was coloring with, whether it be colored pencils or markers like Sharpies and stuff. And it just kind of made them a little crisper. And see, I'm kind of like breaking up the hair into like different, what would be like stranded chunks here, and just giving it shading like that. And see, we already have like half of his bangs. And then I might break this as another part of the bangs here. And I can just kind of, you know, gum back and smooth it over so it's not so choppy. And just your shading. Does anybody have any questions so far or anything? You can say them or you can type them in the chat. If you feel too uncomfortable to say them out loud, or you don't want everybody else to read it, you can just do it just to me. That's totally fine. And I'll try to answer any questions that you have. Just because I know you probably do have some questions. And generally, like when you get the bangs that are a little bit further from the like the front of the face, I usually kind of extend out where the shadow lines on it go. So like these are a little bit higher than the other ones that are closer to the bottom of his face, because these are a little bit longer strands of hair. So like going up just a little bit higher, and then I might have lines that kind of denote the beginnings of these strands and breaking them into sections. How do I choose what colors I want to use? Okay, so I usually, when I'm picking colors and everything, I usually decide my lightest color, or I kind of decide what color scheme I want. and it helps me if like I have my drawing and everything, if I kind of make like what's a little like a color palette on the side here. So I have like a piece of paper and I'll kind of use my colored pencils and I'll kind of just have like I'll just kind of like scribble on it and see what colors I have and what colors I can make. And then I kind of decide from there. So for like skin tones, I usually pick like peach colors, browns, tans, stuff like that. And then for hairs, anime characters have hair in every color. So if you wanted lavender hair, you could do lavender hair. If you want, excuse me, pink, you can do pink. But when I'm picking shadow colors and stuff, so like here I have like a dark blue hair, and so then I would pick an even darker blue, or if you want it to feel more like a blue purple, you might pick a purple to use as a shadow. It's just kind of like looking at your color, like what you know for color theory, if you know that at all. Or like if you can look up like a color wheel online, if you have like a blue, just using shadows and stuff, I would suggest using colors that are like right next to the color that you're using on the color wheel, but just a little bit like darker, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I pick colors, is I plan them out ahead of time. Or if you're doing like a specific character, um, you can follow like their color scheme. Otherwise, you can also just look at characters and kind of get like color schemes that you like. Like maybe you really like characters that have purple hair, and then maybe you think the blue eyes go really nicely with that. It's just kind of like picking colors can be like the hardest part, but just kind of planning them out so that when you have it on there, and you, that way you can save yourself from like coloring something and you realize that those colors don't work nicely together, or you don't like that color at all. You'll save yourself that a little bit if you kind of plan it out, if that makes sense. And it's honestly just a little bit of like you get used to picking colors, so like you know what color you have as like what would be like your base color. So you get used to, if you want to make it darker, you just would go and pick like a darker blue. You just kind of get used to that the more you draw. But did that answer your question at all? And I can kind of show you like when you're coloring skin, like you wouldn't pick just like a darker color. Like if you want it to really pop, I can show you like the colors I usually pick, just because skin's a little different from like when you're coloring hair and stuff. But for like hair and clothes and stuff, for sure, I usually plan it out and then just use like a darker color of the first color that I picked. And see, it kind of has, you can kind of see like the variation on the bangs. If I were to continue doing this hair, I would have like, I would probably just make like really big sections, because usually in the back with the hairs when they start to really chunk it out, to not have as many strands in the back. So you might just see like little pieces of it. But I usually just kind of make it darker. It gets darker the further you get away from the face. And then I'll just looking time wise, I'll spend probably the remainder of the time kind of showing you how to do eyes and skin. But I'll quick show you how to do highlights on here. So usually I just pick, like I said, I pick a white and then I'll go with like a smaller thing. And for highlights, you just want to find where about the midline is of your shadow. And for some anime characters, you can see where they have those thick highlights, where it just kind of like is a swoop like that. That always works, but I also encourage you to try doing it where you kind of highlight each strand or like different strands. So I might put like one here and here, and you can just kind of follow the hair a little bit in the direction of it to really make it shine and make it look like it's nice and silky. So that's like an easy way to put in highlights. And I just kind of go in the center, what would be like my lightest color. And I just kind of like make lines that follow the hair strands direction. Like that. Okay. Eyes. There's a couple different ways that you can color eyes, and there's so many ways under the sun, but the basics is, yeah, I usually do my lightest color and then I'll put a darker color. Usually, if he's looking downward, I usually kind of plan out and put a little bubble here for what would be like the pupil. So you can use it like that. And then there'll be like the darker here. And I just kind of curve them like this. And then curve it up again like this. And then my best advice is when you're working on an eye, what you do to one eye, you do to the other eye. That way you keep them at the same step. And that way, when you're done coloring, you're not like, oh, what did I do to get to that first one? When you really like the first one, if you do them together, it helps you get them both looking more close to the same. So usually I put in the darkest color and then I might put in like another shade darker and do like it again. Like that. And you can always shade it. Otherwise, sometimes you can add in like a lighter highlight color like this to make it glow a little more. And then you always need to add that like shine to the eyes. So I usually add one at like the top of the pupil here. And then I'll usually add one on each side that's like a line. One's usually a little bit bigger than the other, and then I'll do maybe like a little more of a dot here. But you can always add more, like some characters have, so much sparkles. And they're like huge chunks on their eyes. I usually don't generally go for that. I usually kind of go about this. So it kind of stands out. You can also blend it a little bit better. I'm just showing you like the general sections of where the different colors would be. And you can always have more sections of colors. But usually I'd suggest to have at least like 2 or 3 sections of different colors when you're coloring an eye, just so it gives it a little bit more depth. And then if you were going to add in like the shadow of the eye, I usually would just put it at about here. Oh wait, that's white. I'd usually put in the shadows like here, following that line like that. And you don't have to have shadowing on the eye, but it can help you make it stand out a little easier. Okay, now we're gonna go on to coloring skin. Usually I color the skin and I'll first pick like orangish pink. It's a little bit slightly darker than the original skin. And I'll kind of do like the biggest shadows. So in this case, I usually start with the chin or underneath the chin. And I want this a lot bigger. Usually I just kind of go like this and mark it out. This is going to be like shadows. And obviously I'm working a little fast, so I run over into like the face a little bit. The ear. but you can always leave it with just the basic, but you can always add more. So like you can leave it at just this shadow and just one color of shadowing. That always works, but you can always add to it more and add like smaller shadows in a different color. But you can always just leave it at that. And then sometimes you'd probably see like a little bit of a shadowing underneath, like where the ears are and like the edge of the neck here with the hair overlaps a little bit. And then I'll go to the ears next. Usually you have a little bit of shadowing on just basically if you look at an ear, this underside here, and then like that. So just basically the inner ear, like anywhere that it's like recessed and like it's not like this further sticking out, is you kind of want to shade that a little bit to help it look like it's coming in. And then nose, some anime characters, they don't shade under, they shade like this for the nose, and they do one on that side. Some just do where they color like a shape on the underside like this. Some do where they do kind of like a little bit of both. Like that. And then I usually go through and I decide where my light's coming through. So in this case, the light's coming from the top right. So everything that's going to be shadowed is like this, and I put a shadow underneath each strand of hair that's going down. Just kind of make it look like it's coming, like the hair is on top. So like that. And then you can always like simplify or like add to these shadows like this. But at the very least, just kind of like color it like that. You can also make them thicker. Like maybe you want to have more shadowing up at the top here, or maybe you want to have like a shadow of the eyelid or under the eyebrow. Maybe a little bit on the side of the face. Sometimes I like to add a little bit of like red or shadowing underneath the eyes and around the eyes. That I usually do with a little bit lighter of the color, but. And then like you can always put shading like to denote the face more if you want that. I usually leave it where it's not a lot of shading right there. I just kind of leave it where the hair is. You can also shade the lips, and you can shade the lips like this. I usually put and follow what would be like the upper lip line like this. And if you ever look at lips, usually the top is the dark, and then you usually shade the bottom lip. So you'd have like a little bit of dark here. And then I usually put like a little bit here. And then some people put the shadowing on the underside of the lip like this. I usually don't put that, and I'll just put my little bit darker here. You can encase it or you can leave it or open like that. And see, it really starts to add a lot of depth and dimension. I'm gonna start putting in like another, like if I were gonna add another layer of shadowing on the skin, but that's just like at the most basic how I would shadow usually. So you might want to pick, excuse me, for the second color. If you ever look at shadows and stuff, like shadows aren't black, they're actually just skin and stuff. It's usually like more of like a purple color. You have to be really careful with this, but like it's just a really like purplish pink, usually what the skin shadowing is, a little bit like grayish purple pink. And then those are like your darkest shadows and like the darkest part, so it's not going to be as thick. I might only do it like this or even skinnier than that, so it might only be like this little bit right here gets that shade there. And then maybe only like the deepest parts of the recesses on the ears. You might not even put it on the hair. I would put it on the nose though, because the nose does stick out a lot. Then maybe over here too. And like I said, just put in very specific spots. We're almost out of time. Is there any questions that anybody has? Anything they want me to re-go back over? I'll leave these last couple of minutes for questions and such. Nobody has any questions? Well, if nobody has any questions, I guess I can show you quick how I might shade a little bit for like the clothes. So shading the clothes. And if you do have any questions while I'm talking, just please type it or say it or something so I know, and I'll gladly answer it for you or try to. So what I'll end up doing is I'll increase. I usually just kind of shadow what would be like under the collar here, wherever the hair goes, for sure. And then I'll try to kind of like guide in where I might want a wrinkle to go. So maybe there's one here. And another one. There might not be a lot of shadows just because it's so up close. You don't want to add too many wrinkles, just kind of subtly. But that. And then on the other side, I would do something super similar. And like where there's like this collar like this, I'd probably do something like this. I'll probably just kind of make it darker. Where there's not going to be like a lot of wrinkles. I just might make it a little bit darker here. It's underneath the hair and then underneath this collar part. Like that. And just make it like that. And then you can also add like a little bit of a shape if you wanted to like that. Yes. Let's see. Be like a little bit of shadowing here on the green side. There we go. I think that's about all we're going to be able to get through tonight for this one. If you don't have any questions, just make sure you get the picture saved. Just so you can use that for reference. Just remember to put in your guidelines and stuff. And just always like if you have questions about shading and stuff, just kind of like look at pictures of anime characters you like and stuff and just kind of like trying to like break it down and understand it in like the steps layer. I know that can be kind of hard, but it will really help. So I'll go back to this beginning. So just, you know, having it, breaking it down. So like just having your guides in here, you know, just putting in these at the very minimum for guides is always really helpful, and just starting off and always having that circle and stuff. And I think that's all. Thanks for coming tonight. I hope that you got at least something you didn't know or some tip or trick And if you have any questions, we have 2 minutes left. You can always type it in the chat and I can answer them for you. Otherwise, you guys are free to go. Thanks for coming, like I said. And I can just... Of course. Thanks for joining tonight.
Thanks for teaching, Emily.
Of course. Yeah, it was fun. I wish more people would ask questions, but